Good evening and welcome to Mountain Bears. I'm Aeson Knight, and of course, I'm sitting down with the sexiest cubby in the nation, Techy-Joe. How are you, darling?
I'm doing well. How are you this evening?
Evil.
Oh, there we go.
You know, I was evil. I sent you to the garage. You got the white beast fixed. Um,
Yes.
it was handled.
$320 later.
$8 later. We have
It is.
pleased the state. They should be happy.
Yes, it is. It is all inspected. You have new tag lights. We
Mhm.
found and fixed an exhaust leak.
It was
Which
interested.
actually, that was, I think, technically considered the easiest part.
Apparently.
And then the other part was we needed and I think this is worth talking about. So let's back up a second and go
Hmm.
and point out that West Virginia just recently moved to 2-year inspections,
Hmm.
so that you don't have to show up every year and keep doing this and doing this and doing this. We're mostly not an emission state to begin with. So we're and which, granted, that's highly controversial at this point anyway.
Right.
Just for the fact that if you have a car that's been made since the 90s, your emissions are not typically going to be that bad unless you modify.
Right.
Like, they're already more fuel efficient vehicles than they were.
Right.
So then on top of that, like doing emissions checks, not always the greatest indicator. And it's been fraught with issues of car manufacturers doing things to get around that. If anything, we've prosecuted more car companies
Hmm.
for problems they've introduced, Volkswagen being among the biggest to get hit with this,
Right.
because their cars actually knew when they were being emissions tested,
Right.
and they actually ran differently
Hmm.
while being emissions tested.
Right.
So it was a whole thing. Anyway, not that I think necessarily that inspections are a bad thing. I think they're a good thing, to at least make sure you're ensuring the generalities of a vehicle safety.
Hmm.
It does help people. But most of the things that you're doing, you can definitely go 2 years.
Right.
But they have increased. This was the interesting conversation today. So not only have they increased the amount of security around the stickers, like if you thought you were going to break into your mechanic and steal a sticker, you are not. Like, don't even bother.
Right.
They now are required by the state of West Virginia to keep those stickers locked in a safe. And then on top of that, so now the inspection stations are being more heavily monitored. And they did minorly increase the requirements since we went from 1 year to 2 year, that longer span of time.
Right.
They're looking a little more closely, and things that you might have gotten past with before, because that came up today. Uh, Things you might have been, like it was borderline.
Right.
It was borderline. That if we were still doing 1 year inspections, our mechanic would have went, don't worry about it.
Right. See me in 4 months.
Like, try in the next year to get this done. Be sure to get this taken care of. Now is oh, no. You have to get that done. So what
Right.
had happened, or what did happen, our brakes were fine, technically.
Right.
Our brake pads on the rear were a little thin, and that would have been the total, like, you're fine, you can keep going, you've got several miles before you're going to even begin to have a problem.
Right.
But because of the more strict requirements for a 2-year inspection, it's like, no, sorry, you
Right.
have to get those fixed today.
Right.
So that was the biggest chunk charge of what we got charged today. was replacing those brake pads. So yeah, it was kind of a moment of finding out that there's a lot of things that came with that, that as much as, on some level, I think it was the only perhaps piece of legislation that I think anyone in the state was commonly happy with over the last few years,
Right.
to see passed. Especially since they didn't replace like the charging, because like in West Virginia, you can do an extended plate renewal for twice the amount.
Right.
Or you can do it year to year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one fee. So even because I hadn't necessarily followed all this, and I think there were still some moments that things were up in the air, I wasn't even sure if we were going to get charged the same old fee, or if they were going to double and like give you a choice.
Right.
So, pay it for 1 year or pay twice as much and do it for 2. So
Right.
no. It's
No.
now a 2-year fee.
It's now a 2-year fee. It's now 2 years. But what is more interesting to me is they're apparently harassing the inspectors.
Oh yeah. Well, no, the inspectors are harassing them. Yes.
Yeah.
Like they're very in the shops now.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently a lot more than normal, or more than they used to be.
Right.
And apparently they're getting very happy about rejection stickers, which I jokingly said, you can reject it. like if it'll help you have a better week, you go ahead and slap that rejection sticker on there and then scrape it off this afternoon.
Right.
So we joked around about it a little bit, but in all seriousness, that was there was a brief moment today where it was like, okay, we've got to get some cash together really quickly, because wasn't quite expecting that bill, because we had a couple of things we knew were wrong that were like, it's no big deal. That'll be cheap and easy, and y'all can fix that. I got pulled over the other night because our tag lights were out. Is a fun experience. Because we then tried to replace those ourselves and failed spectacularly. And then had is this how you find out you're old? Is this what it is when you can't get the stupid little tag light out because you can't grip it hard enough to pull it, or is it just a big hand problem? So there's a possibility it's just a big hand problem. Either that, or it's just not as easy as YouTube University makes it look.
Well, I think YouTube University used too many jump cuts in that class. B,
you're thinking there's a whole 3-hour series where the guy's like, and trying to get the bulb out.
B, we have the smallest damn tag lights I have ever seen on the planet. I remember tag lights; they're the size of a quarter. The bulb is.
Well, yeah, they're on older vehicles. Yes, they actually were bigger bulbs, but that's because usually it was a single.
Again, you got them. I thought, oh my God, he's gotten the wrong bulbs. These are for dash lights or something. Reflectors on the side.
They're very tiny bulbs.
Yes.
Yeah, they're little tiny pieces. About a half-inch wide, and then 3/4 of an inch long. So they're little rectangle, and they're clippy bulbs. So they just pop in.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to just pop out.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm half tempted to just go try to take the new one out and see if it was, because my fear was that it may have been a little bit corroded in there. And I just couldn't. So we loosened it for him before we took it car, and was like, while we're here,
Right.
Fix our bulbs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, but, I'm glad that it was honest repairs.
Yeah.
Not,
Like,
well, you need a $90 washers.
oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and he was also very kind because we pointed out another issue, and it was funny because him and the other mechanic had just been talking about it. And was like, so it was more of a question at that point, is like,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, while I'm here, can I
Mm-hmm.
ask a question? And because our car originally came, because this is a Kia Sportage, it's really not that tall of a vehicle.
Right.
Okay, like, keep in mind, but I understand some people are short and they enjoy those little tube steps that mount so you can get that step up and in. Quite frankly, I consider them ankle breakers because I don't know what else to really like. That's my experience with them, is when I try to use them, I almost break an ankle because, like, I don't need them unless I'm stepping up to like deal with a luggage rack. They're really not useful for me. And quite frankly, they're usually too thin to begin with. So even in that scenario,
well,
it's
this is my viewpoint. I believe whoever owned the White Beast to begin with had a car dealer that's like, what do you want? And they're like, I want everything in it. Because it's got everything. It's got like 3 cigarette lighters in it. It's got the little rain screens on the side of the car. It's got the bug deflector on the front. I mean, it's got all the damn bells, whistles, and accoutrements.
Yeah, I've long felt that this was purchased like my father used to purchase cars. And yeah, a dealer just threw like anything you want, just get out of my dealership.
Right.
Like, sign the paperwork and leave. It's usually about how my dad bought a car.
Right. We are the second owners of the car if you take out the car lots. Yeah. But it's like, this car has everything that came out in that year. I like that factor. But I hated them. So when they came off, I was not replacing them.
Yeah. So inevitably, the problem with the tube version, just so we can like let people know, don't buy them.
No.
Don't get the little tubies. They look great. They're wonderful when they're first installed. They're basically salt catches, and it's not a metal that can handle salt.
No.
Like, I believe they're like aluminum tubes. I could be wrong, but
no, you're not wrong, because I ripped them off, so they're aluminum.
Yeah.
Well, I ripped one off. Another one fell off.
Yeah. So they very quickly deteriorate. Especially if you're in snow-prone climate and you're out driving in all the snow and salt and ice. They take a beating, and they don't keep. Well, they will start ticking. They'll start ticking as they bounce along the road, which was his experience. The one that fell off literally fell off while he was driving the vehicle.
Yeah.
So anyway, the support mounts, however, are steel.
Yes.
There's very solid steel that these aluminum tubes mount to, also known as the shin splitter, because where the support mounts go is almost perfectly centered to each door. And if you're not paying attention,
right,
you will bust your shins on them. I guess if you're shorter, there would be knee breakers, like knee tappers, because like, this is a solid steel post out from under your car, middle of the door. So, gotta help you.
Yeah, I'm just glad that they've been removed. Granted, they were great anchoring points if I ever had to tie something down, but
Yeah.
there's other anchoring points on that car.
Yeah. So, but they were very nice. They were like, "Don't worry about it." So, yeah, they took care of that for us. We were very, very grateful for that. So,
yeah. And so the White Beast lives again, rides again for another 2 years. We'll see. For those that don't remember, this is the car that we bought during the pandemic, and it is nothing what I would have bought.
well, yeah, no, especially like knowing now, knowing then what we know now, probably wouldn't have. But frankly, at the time, even at that, I don't think we were not finding other good choices for the limited amount of like space we were having to like we needed to get a vehicle. It wasn't really an option. It was kind of an urgency because the Soul had failed. I even, and granted, even then, I really wasn't expecting the experience with the Kia Soul.
Right.
Which if you don't watch the show and this is your first episode, hi, let me introduce you to the fact I have a 2016 lawn ornament Kia Soul with the engine failure that we can't get anywhere with Kia. I'm pretty much as anti-Kia at this point as one can get. I don't get me wrong, I appreciate the beauty of their vehicles and the features and all of that, but having had the owner experience of being told of being put in a catch-22, I will not own another one.
Twice.
Well, the other one wasn't even really a catch-22. That was just such a series of unfortunate events that it just boggles the mind of like, you did a recall because you had a part that was going to potentially fail. Your replacement part that we went and had fixed under recall immediately failed. Which we then in turn had to submit a claim on because it effectively, we replaced a part that was covered under the recall that probably shouldn't have been, with a part covered under the recall that really should have.
Yes.
Because that was what they were still using, the failing part as a replacement part. And I don't think caught this. So they put a unit in our car that in turn failed.
Right.
And this was a brake module. So yes, I was driving and I pressed the brake pedal and the car didn't stop.
Right.
So narrowly avoided an accident. We had to tow it. We ended up having to briefly rent a vehicle. Like, a lot of things went into this. It was a very expensive series of quick successions of expenses. So yeah, only to find out that because one person objected to the recall settlement,
right,
it took like a whole year to get the reimbursement.
Right.
Yeah, it was a horrible search.
Yes. Now, granted, Lady Gwendolyn and her partner at the time was very happy to come down and take us car shopping.
They were so awesome. We were shooting like, oh my God, they drove us all around.
Yes.
Because again, this was at the point in which people, and I swear to God, the cars we looked at, like I would swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Everything we looked at, except this one, looked like someone had pulled it out of a lake, hosed it down, let it dry, and put it up for sale.
Yeah. And we're not like the car that I really was set on. This one is the car that I like the best. Yeah, we pull up and the headlights are halfway full with water.
Oh, was that the one that was like the whole front end had a problem?
The Grand Prix, yes, because
Yeah.
I love Pontiac Grand Prix. It was my first car. It'll probably be, if I ever get a chance to own another one, I will. But
like, I give someone props. They did a lot of work to try to make it look like nothing ever happened.
They did, but you know,
Seed, because one, they apparently were not paying attention to the headlights, and there, which was our first clue, something's wrong. And
right.
the more we looked at this car, the more we noticed like this has had front end damage and really severe front end damage.
Right.
That the more you looked at it, the more you could tell something horrible happened to this car.
Right.
Like,
and I will give props to Gwen. She's the one. She first looked at it and said, you ain't buying this." And I'm like, "But you ain't buying this."
But.
So, but no, the White Beast has been a good vehicle, and it has lingered on longer than I thought it would. We will see how long it lingers on, because I've decided one of us is driving it until it won't drive no more.
And the irony is, and even you have said, I wish this engine had been in the Soul.
Right.
Is that the 2008 era of the Sportage does have one of their, like, so to speak, famous engines that you can treat it like a complete red-haired bastard stepchild. It will keep going. I mean, it may not end up eventually being the most fuel efficient or whatever, but it'll just keep going.
And if
So
it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah. But no, I've we've made the joke about it. It would have been great if this were the engine that they had chosen for the Soul. Because
it's a slant six.
Well, one, that probably would have been overpowered for the Soul. But I mean, a little. Like, it would have been the Kia Soul would be very scary with that engine. Like, in the Sportage, it makes sense. In the Soul, because I think there's probably a good few hundred pounds to start with of weight difference. Yeah, I think it would be a little overkill. Like, you'd be peeling out everywhere. Like, it would be wild.
Ladies, are you hearing a problem out of this yet?
Yes, many. Like, but it is very well suited to the Sportage. Like, it makes sense for it and the size of it and what all it's intended to do.
Right.
So yeah, but no, if it or a 4-cylinder cousin had been what they actually had built into the Soul, this would have been nice.
Well, see, that's the thing with the 4 cylinders. I don't exactly like them.
Okay.
They're always low powered. They're always problematical. They've always tried to cram more into the engine than what the engine can do.
There are instances of that. You do really have to now, like, there are some cars that are notoriously ridiculously underpowered and stupid. The Ford Mustang as a 4-cylinder automatic is the dumbest car on the planet. And it has to do with 4 cylinders have a limited range of power. Like, it's the size of the engine, it can only do so much. The Mustang itself was a very, for especially in the 90s, was a very heavy car. So putting that poor little baby 4-cylinder into it, it's like, are you serious right now?
Right.
Like, this is One, it's just you have badging and a design you don't have a
Right.
Mustang.
Right.
Like you might as well have put the Mustang body on a go-kart for all
Right.
the power it's going to have.
Right.
No one's getting a ticket in that Mustang because it tops out so quickly.
Right.
Like you're not
Well, right.
getting in trouble.
Right. But, looking at the vehicles now, including this one, comparative to what I started with, I can't work on it. Point blank.
Oh no.
Onto the garage.
And that's like, yeah, no, I don't get me wrong. I've never had an intention to work on vehicles personally. But quite frankly, no. We have moved so far away from the basic gasoline engine.
Right.
And hydraulic systems that like clearly make sense to so much computer integration and sensor integration and computer control of all these systems.
Right.
No, I think there's a very limited number of things that an owner, a normal owner, can really be expected to work on.
Right.
Versus like 30 years ago or more.
Right.
But even then, depending what you could have expected.
Right.
Like there's a few parts, there's a few things, some basic maintenance that you do on newer vehicles. Though quite frankly, I'm starting to have an appreciation, though others, especially car enthusiasts, do not. The fact that there are vehicles that are dealer service only.
Right.
That literally you are locked out as an owner.
Right.
From doing even the most basic things. You have to take it to a dealer. They have locked it out.
Right.
You cannot add your own wiper fluid. I think is like a BMW or a Mercedes problem now. Is that you have no access.
Right.
You have to go to the
dealer. And at that point, you're renting the car.
Aren't we all?
True. Very true. And, that's where I get into the problem with it. Like, I like to be able to change my own freaking battery, go out and put oil in it, be able to understand the damn gauges.
Oh, Shannon gets cussed at for people not being able to program tire pressure sensors. That is one of the weirdest little things in the world to make a dealer only option or a mechanic only thing. Which, because I get it, it's a very common failure point. Like every few years, those are going to fail. Because their radios, the sensors, and she can correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, mount to the valve stems and effectively are little radio transmitters. Very long battery life, but it everything dies. And you have to have the equipment for many vehicles to enter the programming mode to set those up.
Right.
Now she brings up a thing. I blame John Deere. They started that you buy the equipment, not the software shot. Technically, what John Deere said is you don't own the tractor. You buy a license to use it. So you're not an owner of the equipment. You are a user of the equipment, and you can be locked out.
Well, and see, this is my problem with it. And first of all, let's talk about this tire pressure sensor thing. Why do we need sensors on our tires? We have these little sticks. I've had one since I was like 7. You check the tire pressure. This isn't hard. And actually, John Deere didn't start this. No, 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 no. Let's back that train up. Apple started this shit.
I mean, if you want to go into the broad category of electronics and computer systems, technically, like, that can be true. But if you want to move into spaces it didn't make sense, like computers, there's a certain level of it that it's like I kind of follow.
Right.
I don't agree, but at least within the context,
Right.
it can begin to make sense.
Right.
But to sit there and totally, radically go a different direction from anything anyone's ever known or expected, to take a piece of farm equipment and be able to software disable the equipment because it needs an update, you didn't get your service, you tinkered with it wrong, you're not an authorized mechanic, to literally turn it off. Insane.
Right.
Insane. No one anticipated that occurring, did not understand at all what they were signing when they agreed to make this purchase.
Right.
And this isn't a situation where it's like, because again, things that I can understand is like remote disablement of a finance vehicle for non-payment.
Right.
Sucks. Welcome to the future. But I can follow that. Make it until you own it. We can turn it off. We have the capability. We can remote disable your vehicle.
Right.
There's so if you don't pay the bill, if your card bounces, if your check bounces, then we're going to press a button.
Right. Well, and that makes sense. But this other stuff, like after it's paid, you have a title which says that it's real estate.
That it's real property.
Yes.
That is an asset, is a property. But the reality is, no, less and less are we actually owning the things we own.
Right.
We are licensed users, which has been a really wild space for the last, decade. But yeah. So, and this was the point I wanted to jump to as well, is do you know how many people I know who don't know how to put gas in their car? Do you think they can be trusted to check their tire pressure? Two things on that one. One, that's exactly why we have tire pressure monitoring systems, is because as vehicle operators, we are notoriously horrible. Notoriously horrible for checking, or more importantly, not checking our tire pressure, which is and it's one of those things that I don't think in anyone's driver education we really drive home enough the point. This isn't a nag light. This isn't a silly, stupid thing that doesn't really matter. This can be a very important and simple maintenance item that can drastically change your day.
Well, see, here's my thing, and I ran into this with the 16. Was that damn light stupid?
Okay, how is it stupid?
If it is below 32 degrees, you have low tire pressure, and we go check. Nope, 32, 32, 32, 32.
No,
how do we have?
We always found one that was at least like a pound low.
Yeah.
Because it is a system. It has some fault tolerance. So it doesn't just kick on every time you're not exactly 32.
Right.
And then we also have to gauge it by how perfect is the equipment that's giving the reading.
Right.
Which there's also, it's saying 32, it could be 31.79, whatever. So again, there's
Right.
always an opportunity, and when you take that across the whole system, the multiple sensors, that is a percentage change of measure. Oh goodness. So you're gonna have to start paying subscription fees to use remote start on Fords and Toyotas soon too.
Yeah.
Like we're really well, car manufacturers are really going all in
Right.
on this software as a service model, or like construct, for how they see the future of cars.
Right.
And I'm waiting for the point, like there's a tipping point in which if you're going to treat my car
Right.
as software as a service, then at some point I expect to just perpetually pay you
Right.
for a vehicle. And I can swap it in and out whenever I want to.
Right.
That I'll pay a little bit more or a little bit less or
Right.
whatever to do that.
Right.
Of course, there will be a premium if I always want to keep a new vehicle. I'll pay a little less if I take an older vehicle.
Right.
But that at any moment, I can just swap those in and out. That if I need a truck this month, then I will go drop off my car and pick up a truck. And I'm waiting for that tipping point, is when the users follow this and expect, when the marketplace expects the
Right.
same out of Ford and Toyota and Kia and whatever company,
Right.
that we expect out of Adobe or
Right.
Microsoft or
Right.
Apple in
Right.
terms of their software as a service pricing model.
Right.
If this is what you're going to do to me,
Right.
then if I no longer own it, I'm waiting for the point that we as a society tip and we don't own cars anymore.
We just rent them.
Almost no one owns cars anymore. You just rent them from Ford.
Right.
You pay the fee. Like there's no credit check, there's no whatever. Can you pay the XYZ cost this month? Then you have a car. It's prepaid for the month ahead. It remote disables if you don't make your payment on time. And if you don't pay within so many days, they'll either come collect the car or the car will collect itself, because we are moving into the self-driving phase.
Right.
So I almost see a point in which the cars begin to return themselves and will just yeet itself back to Ford.
Right. Which I was watching something last night. It's one of the shows that I've started watching TV on. And there was this commercial for another show. And it was quite interesting because the mom's driving. Hey, kids, I thought you guys were napping. Oh, we can't sleep because of the sirens, yada, yada. And she pulls up, and it looks like that there's a huge traffic jam of all these white Teslas. And she notices that there's two Teslas up front that have crashed into two other Teslas. So she's like, okay, I'm sure they'll be here to clean it up. And she notices another white Tesla approaching at a high speed. So she she changes, anyway, gets out of the way. And they just keep doing this. And the problem was they hit an internet dead zone.
Oh, no. The car is offline. The car is offline. So then there was the whole Waze, I think it's Waze issue, WAZE, in which those cars were set to warn in close vehicles with a little beep. The problem was Waze lots about 3 a.m. would collect and redistribute vehicles in the middle of the night. You know, if there were too many here, they'd move some there. And this started creating this like god awful disruption for communities where, because there's so many of them in one place and they are all programmatically doing their thing, there's like 50 cars with little horn honks going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Waze actually had to release a software update to go, okay.
Right.
We see what we did there. We did not understand what was about to happen.
I kind of like this comment.
They want everyone to have a shut off for if cops want to pull someone over too. I'm good. They can keep up or leave me alone. And I like good luck with that, because I think the next iteration is the point where you're not going to have to plug in a little module for your insurance company to know how you drive. I think your car is going to begin being a witness against you. Like, this is my, like, I think there's, again, I think there is a massive tipping point about to happen. In which road safety, theoretically, for non like autonomous oopsies, the honestly, our roads may become safer than they have ever been, even with the oopsies of autonomy, of self-driving cars, of AI-driven, AI operated vehicles. And the features that are built in, if they malfunction, I think we're headed towards a point in which we have the safest roads we've ever had. But I think it's also going to come at a cost of that crap you used to do at 3 o'clock in the morning because no one else was around, and technically it was not unsafe because, quite frankly, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and no one else is around, is gonna be reported by your car. And we're gonna see people getting tickets for things that they did without any other witness than the car itself. Like, and so we're gonna, I think they're gonna do that before they do an actual kill switch. I think we're gonna end up creating a law enforcement disablement that basically says, as soon as it is safe to get this vehicle off the road, pull over, lock the doors, and don't open them.
That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting in general. All right, so I got a blast from the past.
Oh?
It was my first big crime series that I ever watched, that I can remember watching on TV.
Oh, yeah. So Susan Smith, a name we haven't heard much in the last 30 years, denied parole 30 years after killing her 2 sons. Susan Smith killed 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander in 1994. So Susan Smith, for those of you who don't remember or weren't alive, a South Carolina woman who admitted to drowning her 2 children 30 years ago, was unanimously denied parole after she appeared before the board for the first time on Wednesday. Quote, "I know what I did was horrible, and I would give anything if I could go back and change it," Smith, overcome with emotion, told the parole board via Zoom. "I love Michael and Alex with all my heart." On October 25th, 1994, Smith, then 23 years old, strapped her sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander, into their car seats and let the car roll into a lake near her home. At first, Smith lied to police and said a black man carjacked her and kidnapped her sons. Smith's husband believed her, and the young parents appeared on TV to plead for the suspect to bring the boys home. On November 3rd, 1994, police confronted Susan Smith about her story, and she admitted to the killings. The board mentioned how her case took resources away from the law enforcement community who searched for her sons. Asked what she would say to the responders, Smith said, "I'm sorry that I put them through that." Quote, "I wish I could take that back. I really do," Smith, now 53, said. "I didn't lie to get away with it. I was just scared. I didn't know how to tell the people that loved them that they'd never see them again. I am a Christian and God is a big part of my life, and I know He has forgiven me," Smith said. Susan Smith's ex-husband, David Smith, was emotional as he asked the board to deny parole. Quote, "This wasn't a tragic mistake. She purposefully meant to end their life," he said, adding, "I've never felt any remorse from her for it. She came pretty close to causing me to end my life because of the grief that she brought upon me," David Smith said. So far, his ex-wife has served 15 years per child, he said. "It's just not enough."
Right.
David Smith's current wife, Tiffany Smith, asked the board to keep Susan Smith in prison for life to give the family some peace. She said her husband can't get out of bed some days because of the pain. Michael and Alex didn't get a chance at life. They were forced the death penalty, she said. Tommy Pope, the prosecutor in the case, also asked the board to deny parole, saying Susan is always focused on Susan. "Susan made a horrible, horrible choice to choose a man over her family," Pope said. "If she could have put David in the car, he would have been there too. For the crime she committed, that punishment has not been achieved yet," Pope said.
Right.
At the trial, prosecutors argued the young mom was having an affair and said her boyfriend broke off the relationship because of her children. Susan Smith's defense said she planned to die by suicide with her children, but left the car at the last second. Pope noted Wednesday that she wasn't wet, she wasn't injured when she ran for help. The defense also focused on her mental health and her childhood. Susan Smith's stepfather testified that he sexually abused her for years. Susan Smith was convicted but spared the death penalty and sentenced to life in prison. She is eligible for a parole hearing every 2 years, beginning at the 30-year mark. David Smith told the parole board Wednesday, "I will be here every 2 years going forward to ensure that her death doesn't go in vain, that their death doesn't go in vain." So yeah, that's the rest of it is just about her and some things that have happened, and ultimately that, you know, as much as she is trying now to look repentant, her time in prison hasn't been quiet.
No.
So yeah,
Nor has she been repentant.
not. And that's kind of the Susan Smith problem, is that she was very and I think it's going to be her problem in her quest to get parole, is that she was so believable.
Right.
Like if you go back and you watch the news reports, honestly, she was really, really believable. Everyone was like there with it. That this horrible incident had occurred, that, you know, that she had been carjacked and her babies were stolen and with her car, and like just the emotional damage of that,
Right.
just to find out that no, she did it herself. So she is a very convincing woman. Unfortunately, that makes it probably 10 times harder
Right.
for her to, knowing what we know now, actually be convinced by her.
Right.
Is that like there's which on some level is probably a little unfair to her. Not that I feel any sadness over that, nor do I think anyone else does. Is that even if she were truly repentant, we would all have a hard time believing it.
Well, that, and she's been up to annex. Even up to a month before her parole, she was up to annex, and they covered that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it really seems like this is probably going to be the most drug out every 2 years news report now. Is
Right.
that Susan Smith denied parole? Susan Smith denied parole.
Mhm.
At least until she hits a point in which, maybe compassionate release while she dies.
You know,
Um, and at that point, it's more about the state saving money
right.
than about her.
Right.
So it's it was just such a tragic case,
Right.
and senseless and
Mm-mm-mm.
stupid. I mean, it just there's so many things wrong with it.
Well, it's senseless. It's stupid. It's like, excuse me. What for me? It blew my mind. Okay, first of all, we have a carjacking. That's what it was originally booked as a carjacking.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching Channel 6, WAY Channel 4 at 6 p.m. and then playing the news conferences and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming out, and like this was also during the OJ Simpson. This is right before OJ Simpson, right before John Bonet. I mean, like, and this is one of the cases very rarely covered in true crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think because it's just trying to put logic behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not really a mystery,
Right.
and it's a horrible story,
Right.
and it's just a bunch of self-serving choices
Mm-hmm.
that were so out of like proportion.
Right.
And so there's not really a lesson to be learned. There's nothing really all that interesting about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like she had a great plan. It's just,
Yeah.
honestly, it would almost have been and please take this with a grain of salt that it's meant, and it is a flippant comment, but it
Mm-hmm.
would almost have been a more interesting story if she just shot the kids. You
Well,
know what
what
I mean?
I
Like, we could
don't
have
get is
followed that more logically.
right. What I've
Then,
never gotten about the case is why not just divorce the dude and sign over the rights? I think he would have been more, everybody would have done better with that.
yeah, and it's like, so what are you doing? Like, what was your? I mean, what the hell?
Right.
Like, again, nothing about the story ever really. It was very tragic and emotional
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was just, what are we doing?
Right.
What is about all you could say about it?
Right.
Like, so here's to another 2 years of Susan Smith behind bars.
Yes. And may she spend many more years there. All right. So we're going to give our scarlet warning. This is if you have children around you. This is a great time to put in your earplugs because not this story, but the following story may not be adaptable for children.
So yeah, our next story is perfectly fine, but have those earphones ready because we'll be quickly moving to one that is not child appropriate.
Right.
All
All right.
right.
So the FREC is urging to shield the AES Ohio's customers from extended grid costs due to the 1.5 GW Amazon data center.
Yeah, so it's a 1.5 gigawatt, which is a very large
Mm-hmm.
electrical demand. So language in a proposed agreement between AES Ohio and Amazon is quote unquote ambiguous, leaving residential ratepayers without adequate protections, the Office of the Ohio Consumers Counsel said. All right, so under the agreement, Amazon will pay AES Ohio a transmission cost recovery rider, or TCRR, that the utility expects will generate revenue that at least equals the network upgrade costs. However, the Office of the Ohio Consumers Counsel said in a November 13th protest at FERC that the language in the proposed agreement is vague and undefined and ambiguous, leaving residential ratepayers without adequate protections from the project's potential costs. To protect consumers, FERC said, to protect consumers, FERC should require AES Ohio and Amazon to amend this language and unequivocally state that the network upgrade costs will be exclusively collected by AES Ohio through TCRR charges to Amazon, regardless of whether the load associated with the new customer facilities reaches the minimum load, the OCC said. Under the agreement, the data center's required minimum load ramps up from 45.5 megawatts when it begins operating to 336 megawatts by September 15, 2027. The data center agreement comes as AES Ohio's average monthly residential bills have soared about 53% in the last 4 years to $215.03 from $141.24, with the utility proposing a 15% residential rate hike, according to the OCC. Given the ongoing economic hardship and looming massive utility bill increases for AES Ohio's residential customers, the Commission should require the construction service agreement to include specific language to preclude shifting data center costs to those consumers, the OCC said. AES Ohio asked FERC to approve the agreement by December 23rd. Meanwhile, a Public Utilities Commission of Ohio administrative law judge has scheduled a hearing on December 3rd to take testimony on competing settlement agreements that would establish a tariff for data centers connecting to AEP Ohio's system. Parties to one agreement include AEP Ohio, PUC staff, the OCC, the Ohio Energy Group, Ohio Partners for Affordable Energy, and Walmart, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta. I messed that up. Take two. Parties to one agreement include AEP Ohio, PUC staff, the OCC, the Ohio Energy Group, Ohio Partners for Affordable Energy, and Walmart. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta joined Constellation Energy and other groups in proposing their own set of rates for data centers and other electricity-intensive customers for PUCO consideration. That was the end of the story. So this is the ongoing issue, and there's a companion item I want to bring up real quick, where this is not the next story. This is a related item. But we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous that we are paying 51% more in power. Ohio is. West Virginia is having the same thing, because guess what? AEP, AECP, they're all the same damn company. They go and they submit these 15% rate hikes in all their states.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even when they're disconnected companies, which I don't know how many of us believe these are disconnected companies anymore, even if they are on paper and you tell me they have different boards, I don't care. We're continuously seeing increased costs. And we have long been outstripping the rate at which consumers of services are able to pay.
Right.
Like we're effectively, as consumers,
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, quite frankly, if you're talking about a 15% increase on a power bill,
Mm-hmm.
for many of your consumers, if they get a standard wage increase,
Mm-hmm.
the cost of your utility rate hike for one utility
Mm-hmm.
could, for a large number of consumers, be more than their pay raise for that.
Exactly.
For a service that has effectively gone up by 50% already in the
Mm-hmm.
last 4 years. So roughly we're talking about 12.5% per year,
Mm-hmm.
make it even 13% per year, just
Mm-hmm.
about. Um, another 15%,
No.
another 15%. You're quickly outstripping the rate in which anyone can earn enough money to pay their power bill
Right.
without having to start making sacrifices
Mm-hmm.
within their lives. So disposable income, then we move into, the things that you really, really, really should do, but you could opt to do less of. And then we start cutting from essentials.
Right. And
So,
and here's the thing.
and that's just utilities.
Right.
That's just utilities.
And I could even try to digest this. If, and this is the big if the service was reliable.
No, even at reliability, do I not even care anymore?
Well, what I mean
Because
by that is we're paying higher power bills and having less reliability. There is no reason that my house needs to be set to run in 2024, 1954, and 1832.
I mean, effectively, but no, like, so the reliability issue, I, I have so many issues with trying to say, well, if it was at least, 100% and all the issues got fixed really quickly, so that, like, it's like 99.99999.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you take those nines out as far as you want to. And so you only ever saw a power blink. The reality of a utility is that's already the expectation
Mm-hmm.
of delivering a public utility.
Right.
Like, that's what we were paying for
Mm-hmm.
to begin with.
And we're still not getting it.
Yeah, and like, that's been a good luck.
Yeah.
But then but more important to that
Mm-hmm.
is the claim that they are making when they ask for the rate increases
Mm-hmm.
is that they need this money to be able to continue providing services,
Mm-hmm.
under the impression that if they don't get the rate increase, they may have an insolvency.
Mm-hmm.
But I have yet to see one of these companies that is not posting massive profits,
Right.
hand over fist. So the rate increases, at least from a consumer perspective, and the allegations have been made towards many
Right.
companies, are effectively just cashing in
Mm-hmm.
and cashing out.
Right.
So we go in with our form pre-filled to say, oh, look, we're going to have a problem if we don't get a rate increase. And then they turn around
Mm-hmm.
and they still don't do anything differently.
Right.
Like, this is what they ought to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do that anyway. And then they posted massive profits because they didn't do the thing they said they were going to do, and then turn around and do it again.
Right.
And do it again. So you're just literally getting a rubber stamp of approval from
Mm-hmm.
a Public Utilities Commission based on a stack of lies of what you as a company need to do
Mm-hmm.
to keep this public utility running and keep your company solvent to run it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go over here with the other hand and you give it to investors and you give it to,
Your CEO. You're
right.
not giving it to the lineman. You're not giving it to anything else.
Like it's not going into new equipment, or it's marginally going in. Like you're asking for a 15% rate increase. You might be using half a percentage to actually do the thing.
Right. But what gets me, and let's go way back here, shaky way back machine. They went through and they had to replace all the line and all the wiring in our neighborhood. And everybody in the neighborhood was like, oh my God, it got a lot brighter here. Oh my God. And we're like, so you were holding our neighborhood together with fucking duct tape and a spit and a prayer.
And this is the giant infrastructure problem that we have, is you don't know you have a problem until you see the problem.
Right.
And what we've been facing is a massive increase in power demand on infrastructure that is 50 to 100 years old, that is not being properly maintained. It's mostly emergency fixes, or like our neighborhood situation, we effectively had a road project that widened the road and forced all the poles to be reset, all the line to be rerun. And then suddenly we're now caught up to where we should have been, where if there were appropriate incremental improvements being made, we would have been. Only to realize that suddenly our lights are brighter. We're getting a whole 100 watts out of a 100-watt bulb or 100-watt equivalent, and that things are working better.
Yeah.
Because we're getting consistent power delivery, and our neighborhood's not on the verge of a brownout,
right,
as our 100% marker. Is that we're no longer underpowered, we're no longer struggling with aging equipment and corroding line.
And sitting here discussing this, we haven't had to replace the appliances as often.
Yeah.
Like the microwave is 7 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's wild, isn't it?
I know, right?
Yeah, because this is the hidden problem with improper voltage. Is it is very problematic for the longevity of electronics. And if you want to talk simple electric motors, an under over voltage situation, not really that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. It'll run a little faster, it'll run a little slower. It's a basic electric motor. But as much like our vehicles, we have incorporated more electronics into our appliances. Oh, this makes massive differences. Like even tiny, like under voltage, over voltage. The narrow band of operation for this equipment is such, you're doing damage.
Right.
Like you're doing damage. You're gonna cause damage to our more modern appliances. So if you've been trying to figure out why that 80s or 70s refrigerator that someone in your family owns that will not die is still living, and the smart fridge you just bought 2 years ago croaked, and you that was a replacement of another 2-year-old refrigerator, this is why.
Yes. All right, so let's dig into this Mississippi court case, and I'm flipping our warning on.
All right. So we'll get to the other story in a future episode.
Right.
All right. So Missouri court says it's okay and again, here's your warning, is okay to call a gay employee cocksucker, and this is a direct quote, and ask if he has AIDS. Missouri appeals court has ruled that an employer did not violate the state's human rights law by calling a gay employee a cocksucker and asking if the man had AIDS. James Pittman sued the Kansas City-based Cook Paper Recycling Corporation last year, alleging that he was fired in 2001 after 7 years at the company because he was gay, according to Courthouse News Service. A lower court had previously dismissed Pittman's lawsuit, and a 3-panel judge upheld that ruling last week in a split decision, with the 2 judges in the majority saying that the Missouri Human Rights Act only covers gender and not sexual orientation. Quote, no matter how compelling Pittman's argument may be, and no matter how sympathetic this court or the trial court may be to Pittman's situation, we are bound by the state of the law as it currently exists, said Chief Judge James Welch, noting that Missouri's law only bans discrimination based on race, color, religions, national origin, sex, ancestry, age, or disability. Pittman accused, we had to jump there for an ad. Pittman accused Cook Paper president Joe Jordan of making discriminatory comments about his sexuality, with the lawsuit saying that Jordan told Pittman that quote, he was a cocksucker and made other comments of a sexual nature discriminatory to a male homosexual, including asking him if he had AIDS. When Pittman broke up with his partner, he claimed the company treated him more harshly than a male who was getting a divorce from his female wife, and, quote, caused the workplace to be an objectively hostile and abusive environment based on sexual preference. The Missouri branch of the American Civil Liberties Union, which filed a brief in support of Pittman, called for legislative changes to protect the state's LGBT community from discrimination. There's no federal law that prevents employers from discriminating against workers based on their sexual orientation. Quote, the court did not deny that what James experienced was real, but instead made clear that their hands were tied by Missouri law. Sarah Rosie, the ACLU of Missouri's Director of Advocacy and Policy, said in a statement, contrary to what many believe, lesbian, gay, and bisexual Missourians can still be fired, kicked out of their homes, or denied service at a restaurant because of who they are and who they love.
And this is across the country. Like, this is just not in Missouri. There's very few states that have done the Equality Act. Right. This Equality Act has been sitting for 9 years in our House of Representatives and hasn't been called to vote, hasn't been called to order, hasn't done nothing except be wrote, sponsored, put on the ballot, and set in committee.
Yeah. And fundamentally, the inline problem is that while we have made a lot of cultural change in acceptance over the last, say, 20 to 30 years, or 40 or 50 or however long a period one may choose to go back, while that has occurred, and there has been at least some changes that are sexual orientation protecting, such as hate crimes legislation, and companies individually have made choices to adopt policies that are anti-discriminatory. There does and fundamentally what I'm getting at is it's created this false sense that we have a legal protection,
right?
That you know, that because hate speech is illegal and hate crimes are illegal and there's riders to the sentences, if you're found to have committed hate crime, it was never actually codified.
Exactly.
It's not a law on its own merits. that protects us in normal day-to-day discrimination.
Right.
So if you want to be thrown out of a restaurant, you can be thrown out. Or if someone wants to throw you out of a restaurant, you can be thrown out of a restaurant.
Right.
It just exists. That
Right.
is where we have been. Which speaks to a lot of this kind of patchwork notion that a lot of people now are not as familiar with. And even then we're not familiar with. There are some municipalities,
Right.
towns, cities, whatever, communities that have adopted the legal protections.
Right.
But as for like larger units, such as the state or the country,
Right.
we didn't get that.
No.
Like right to marriage, that we sort of got, but we never actually got it as legislation.
Right.
In most instances.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we have to go back to states and municipalities for that.
Right.
What we got was much like Roe v. Wade. Was a court decision that said you can't do that.
Right.
So by default, because if you can't do that in terms of discriminate, then it is a legally permissible act. So you can get married. Here's your marriage ring.
Right.
Except that's a court case.
Nope, we actually got the Respect for Marriage Act into law.
Oh, that's right.
That was in 22. So we did finally get law for a two-party marriage.
Yes, any two parties.
Yes.
But no, well, mostly any two parties. There's some exceptions, and most of those make sense.
Right.
So, but yeah, no. So this is what we're talking. But as an example, there was a period there in which there was not
right
legal protection.
Right.
And it's still fundamentally this weird patchwork of it's illegal to discriminate according to the Supreme Court. So technically, you have a right to do it, is what the Supreme Court found. But you didn't get a law that specifically said, or a correction or amendment to law that specifically said, this is what the law is. You can do this. It is legally permissible until the respect for marriage.
Right.
And fundamentally, that gray area, which we've already seen, unfortunately, and horrifically blow up in Roe v. Wade.
Right.
That honestly, I don't think anyone thought would happen. I you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure very early on there was an idea that like this is going to get overturned. This is going to get overturned. But you get 40 some years down the road, no one's sitting there going, "Oh yeah, this is going to be the year."
Right. But this is why you have to dig through your news. This is why you have to talk through your news. This is why you have to focus on your news, because like things start taking precedence over things.
And that was a legal right that held based on Supreme Court decision for decades.
Right.
Only to just as quickly find a case and overturn it.
Right.
At whiplash-inducing speed.
Yes.
And so it leaves people in a precarious space, where you're at the whim of who can get a case to court to challenge the ruling.
Right.
That can win.
Right.
And it may take 40 years. Or it may take 4 months.
Right.
So do you have a right, becomes the question, do you actually have a right
Right.
Or do you have kind of this interim right until
Right.
it's codified into law?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is you have a temporary right until it
Right.
is codified into law, at which point
Right.
you have a right.
Right.
And this was part of, like, and it has been part of the struggle that, like, ACLU and Human Rights Campaign had tried to talk about over the last, like, 10 years,
Right.
was that, yes, technically you now have these rights, the
Mm-hmm.
fight's not over.
Right.
And that was a big, like, thing, especially after Oberfell,
Right.
was pointing out, or trying to point out to people, yes, technically gay marriage just became legal.
But it isn't.
There's an asterisk here.
Right.
Is that do it while you can, because we don't know how long this is going to hold until it gets cemented.
Right. And, I had to go and Google real fast, but Roe Wade was signed, and within months, Watergate happened.
Mm-hmm.
So the Congress and the Senate got a little distracted on the to-do list, the ADHD bodies of our government.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that happen, and nobody went and cleaned up these messes. This is what has to happen when there is Supreme Court rulings, is they have to back up and go, but that's got to be law, doofies. Let's write the law.
Well, and more importantly, like, even once you write the law and you submit it and it gets tabled and you rewrite it and resubmit it and
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again, there are, and abortion has been one
Right.
from the beginning, that despite the Supreme Court decision,
Mm-hmm.
became a very hot topic in political space that honestly didn't die.
Right.
And I remember as a kid going, but you have a legal right to it. Isn't abortion settled? Like, why are we still
Right.
fighting about this every effing election?
Right.
Like, and I remember this as a teenager, this is the dumbest question ever.
Right.
Only to see, flash
Right.
forward 20 years, the moment that it fell, because it never
Mm-hmm.
got made into a law.
Right.
Supreme Court decisions are nice and are, so to speak, in lieu of bad judgment laws,
Right.
but they themselves do not make law.
Right.
So anyone trying to make the argument that legislating from the bench is a thing, no, it's not.
Right.
You can look at a law and go, that's discriminatory, that is problematic, that creates an undue burden, that does any number of things
Right.
that the law never intended to do, or that we as a society go, okay, that was a very different time period in which that law was written,
Mm-hmm.
and society moved on.
Right.
Like, this is a horrible law that says, for instance, and you will still see deeds to this day, at least for a while longer, that have sales covenants that specifically state, and some of them in horrible language, but generally state you have to effectively sell this property to another white person. This was part of redlining.
Right.
And we'll still see deeds that have these covenants. They're ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
They are no longer enforceable. You cannot be denied under equal opportunity the right to buy this house, but the covenant is on the deed, and it just keeps going. Because that's how the deed's written.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think those do typically, when they change hands, get rewritten, and I think those are being removed, but you will still see the deeds, the older deeds from when someone bought a house in the 70s or the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even into the 90s, where
Right.
those covenants kept going.
Right.
Long time.
Right.
So we're potentially 20, 30 years
Mm-hmm.
before that's such a rarity
Right.
that you just, like, people would just stare at it and go, what the hell is this?
Right.
I've never seen such a thing.
Right.
Now you deal with realtors and they're like, oh yeah, we run into those.
Right.
It's unenforceable. You can't enforce it. You can't take anyone to court over it. You can't be evicted from your home because of it. You can't,
Right.
like, there's no, it is an unenforceable provision of the deed.
Right.
And I do believe that it gets removed in most places
Right.
when the property changes hand and the new deed is issued.
Right.
So yeah, but it's a horrible reminder
Mm-hmm.
that, yeah,
Yeah. It's
people
still there. Some of them
literally,
are still there. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of ridiculousness. And especially when you have a long-term housing ownership. Now, flip-flopping and explaining why you see older gay men that the first thing they did as soon as they done whatever was buy a house. And, this is why house ownership is so highly important in the LGBT community. While most LGBT people own their own businesses, this is our reaction to it.
is because fundamentally it is not illegal to be gay and own a business. It's not illegal to be gay and own a house. And you as a business owner can choose to discriminate or not. And you as a homeowner can choose to discriminate or not as to who lives in your home, what tenancy you allow. But you can be at the whim of someone who employs you or whose business services you use, or of another property owner that offers you tenancy. Right. So the best thing you can have in your community is an ally, at least, if not another, LGBTQ person who owns property and owns and operates businesses, including like some very basic things, hotels, restaurants, on down the line, right, that has made the decision that, like, we're not going to discriminate on that. Right. It's legal for me to discriminate on that. I legally do this. I have chosen as a business owner, as a property owner, not to do that. Right. And again, this is part of that patchwork. It's nice, it's great, but it's not guaranteed. Right. And so you run into communities where good luck renting, good luck keeping a rental, good luck eating out. You can be banned from literally every restaurant in town. Like, you will get railroaded out of this town because you can't find anywhere to live. You have to leave town to buy your groceries. You have to leave town to get new tires on your car. You have to leave town because no business will serve you. There is a right to refuse service that exists.
Yes. All right. With that, you can take your earbuds out if you want. We're going to move into Are You an Asshole?
Which, I mean, we probably ought to have earbuds for, but anyhow. All right. Am I the asshole for refusing to help my brother pay off his debt after he tried to publicly shame me? I, 19 female, started a new job recently and saved up quite a bit of money over the past year. My family was proud of me, but my older brother, 25 male, immediately started making comments like, quote, "You're finally rolling in cash, so I guess you can help your family now." He has always been bad with money, mostly from wasting it on gambling and unnecessary purchases. Last week, he asked me for $3,000 to help pay off his credit card debt. He said he needed it to avoid getting into more trouble. I told him no because I've seen how he handles money and I don't trust him to use it wisely. He got mad and called me selfish, saying I was being unfair since I don't have any big expenses right now. It didn't stop there. A few days later, he went on social media and posted a rant about how I was hoarding money while my own family struggled. He even called me a bad sister for refusing to help. Now, some family members are saying I should just lend him the money to avoid more drama. But I don't think I should have to pay for his mistakes. Am I the asshole?
No.
Not the asshole, and there are so many things going here. Now, and I chose this one because I think there's a potential audience split.
Okay.
Because there's one mind camp that says, if you've got it, you give it to family in need.
Mm-hmm.
There's another mindset that says family's nice and all,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't throw good money after bad.
Right.
And these two mindsets often compete against each other in general social situations.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, this is about the two people that are going to be involved.
Right.
Someone who is consistently and repetitively making horrible money decisions,
Right.
asking for help while they struggle, from someone who is not making horrible financial decisions.
Right.
And it can be a lot of it quits being about the money very quickly.
Right.
And it starts being about, if you loved me, if you cared about me, if you weren't so selfish, if you weren't whatever,
Right.
is where this starts. If you weren't so stupid, if you weren't, and it gets very personal very quickly and totally gets out of the logic of the money very, very quickly, or even the fact that like there is a relationship here. And even if you're on that camp side of, anything to help family regardless, it quickly moves away from that and quits being about loving and caring about your family and becomes a very bitter, nasty conversation.
Well, it even gets even more into, like, this just shows where the brother is now trying to shame and overpower. And this isn't a loan. Okay. Loans means that there are a set standard of payments that will be paid back with an interest rate. Even if the interest rate is zero.
Yeah.
He has no guarantor of a repayment. There is no interaction of a repayment.
Oh, there's a guarantee of the repayment. Let me tell you how much she's going to get. Zero. Goose egg. Nothing.
Right.
Because even if in all honesty he had said, which it doesn't seem like he did, because he asked for $3,000, I don't think he asked her to lend him $3,000.
Right.
I think he just asked for $3,000. And so what makes you think about his situation? That any of the, like, is he going to Gamblers Anonymous?
Right.
Is he trying to fix his mistakes?
Right.
Does this sound like someone? Is this someone that sounds like they are legitimately trying to fix it?
Right.
Or does this really come across like someone who is just going to take that relief and use it to perpetuate it? Right. So this, if you want to go biblical, this is the, give a man a fish versus teach a man how to fish. In terms of how effective is giving him $3,000 gonna be? You fix today's problem and he won't get in more trouble and his credit card's paid off, if that's what he actually does with the money and why he's actually asking for it and what he's gonna actually do, which is probably highly unlikely. I will say that the most likely version of giving someone with a gambling problem $3,000 is they are going to believe
Right.
they can take this $3,000 and make it 6 or 12 or 18 or $24,000 or hundreds of thousands of dollars and pay off everything.
Right.
Because that's part of the gambling problem. It's
Right.
not just buying a few lottery tickets or, well, you could have probably made some better choices with that $50.
Right.
It is getting to a point where you truly believe you're gonna win.
Right.
You have to win. And
Right.
so all you need, and what the world, the universe, everyone in your family, and everyone around you is denying you,
Right.
is the ability.
Right.
So you start taking money away from things. And even when you lose, it never clears it. It's just, well,
Right.
I needed to have more money. I just needed to buy more lottery tickets. I just needed. And this is more of the addiction side of it, is that no matter how many times this fails,
right,
you keep chasing it.
Correct. The other thing here, and the other thing that comes to mind, is there's a difference between helping family
and enabling
family. Helping family means you get him into, and I do not like the author, but I like the system. You help him understand the, what is his name? Debt-free, snowballing debts, that type of thing.
John Ramsey?
There you go. Ramsey. Get him into the Ramsey system. Give him the $1,000 nest egg and say, here's a $1,000 nest egg. This is your baby step. I'll do that for you. You got to do the rest.
Yeah. But even at this point, I think this is going to quickly be wasted. Right. There's no legitimate intent, especially if you're and then is to go on Facebook and literally make this sound like your sister is a monster who won't help you and doesn't care, and even though your family's struggling because of decisions and choices you made.
Your family's struggling because
you're not helping your family.
And it sounds to me like the rest of the family isn't struggling. The brother is struggling.
I'm thinking maybe the rest of the family, as in like mom and dad and aunts and uncles and whatever, may just be like they're living a normal average life. Like they're not rich, they're not poor, they're sort of in the middle. They may be treading water a little bit, but they're not broke, but they're not give away $3,000.
Right.
So my advice to OP is tell those family members to get together, and between them, they can come up with $3,000 to give your brother. And when they start backpedaling and sputtering, that's why I'm not giving him $3,000.
Exactly.
If you can't cash in for $3,000, put your money where your mouth is, or a portion of that, a couple hundred here, a couple hundred there, 1,000 here, whatever, to get him to this $3,000, or hell, $1,500. $1,500. Y'all come up with $1,500. I will match you, and hell, I'll give you the other $1,500. And he can pay off his credit card. He can fix his mistakes. Gladly, but y'all have to agree.
Right. All right. So the poll is up. You can go to vote if he's an asshole. I mean, if you're an asshole for not helping family. No, you're not an asshole. Everyone is shitty here, or you're a dill pickle. It is over on the YouTube. All right. So let's move into Ask Gay Bros.
So Ask Gay Bros over 30. If a waiter was being flirty and your partner left an unusually big tip afterwards, would this bother you? I'm trying to figure out if I'm being unreasonable. My husband and I went out to dinner last night, and the waiter was, well, overly friendly. I don't usually pick up on these things right away, but this guy wasn't subtle. What really got to me was at the end of the meal, my partner left a much bigger tip than he normally does. It wasn't a bad meal or bad service, and the service couldn't have been bad because of how often he kept coming over to our table. But it wasn't extraordinary either. After I did ask why the big tip, he said the service was good. It was average. This is what the waiter was doing. 90% of his attention was on my partner. First question he asked was if we were a couple. He'd point things out leaning over my partner. He's talking to him and crouching down by the table, leaning into him. The table wasn't that low, neither was the place that noisy. He was very touchy, and the conversation wasn't always about the food.
It wouldn't bother me. It might be a relief. But anyhow, your side of the story.
Oh, I don't think it would bother me. And honestly, I think we've had it happen.
We have.
Not even just like directly this, but a lot of different situations have occurred. And quite frankly, I have flat said, I will pimp you out for shrimp. And have. You know, and I will make you look cute at a car dealership because I need financing. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm all about some, if you got it, work it. Now here's the thing though. When you're going out with your partner for a meal, on a date, however you want to term it, that's supposed to be couples time. And I understand that for the service industry, you are so reliant on your tips. And quite frankly, the easiest way, as many a flirty waitress has found out, that you know, plunging necklines, giggles, and you know, some coquettishness will drastically increase your tips.
Right.
And typically this is a straight couples problem, in which a young female server and a couple interacts with a couple, usually with the man who is assumed to pay, and this can get a little out of hand, to the point that it's insulting to the relationship. Also insulting to the man sitting at the table, because your server's not actually attracted to you. Yeah. They just know that if they make you feel like a stud, your tip goes up along with other things. It's true.
This is why you buy uniform shirts a size smaller than you should wear, included, and it's always the second button. Don't go to the third; you look crappy. You know, and this is when it's just like, for me, and I guess I'm oblivious most times, and you're like, are you not seeing? I'm like, what? My coffee cup hasn't gone empty. You have had all of the strawberry lemonade you could have gotten your paws on.
Oh yeah, no. I will totally go down for it. If my food's going to come out right, if my drink glass is going to stay full, I don't care what's happening on the other side of the table. I will make fun of it.
Yes.
I will make fun of it.
Yeah.
But am I going to get truly bothered? No.
No.
And here's my rationale for that, which I think is the next part of this. And it ultimately comes down to, what is your relationship like? What are the confines for that? And if you start at the beginning knowing that the worst part of this is that the server is going to get an unfairly high tip,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing else is ever going to happen,
Right.
does it matter?
Right.
Is it really worth getting upset over? Because
Right.
the reality is, and I will say this to probably a 90th percentile,
Right.
nothing's going to happen.
Right.
This is a server trying his best to use soft skills
Mm-hmm.
to increase his tips for his own well-being.
Right.
And it really it is a very self-centered thing. Nowhere is there a real interest in your partner.
Right.
Again, to the 90th percentile. It is very super rare.
Right.
In reality, for this to translate into more.
Right.
Like, does it happen? Yes.
Right.
But generally not going to be an issue. I would say if you do feel like it's starting to move in that direction where this isn't just increasing your tips, which again, I'm going by everything you've described is this is increasing tips. That like make that human connection and increase tips. If you feel like it starts to get uncomfortably,
Right.
I know you're already uncomfortable.
Right.
If this is more than touching arms and shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
and batting eyelashes and that, if this moves into touching legs and moving towards crotches,
Mm-hmm.
then yes, you absolutely need to find another restaurant and not go back.
Right.
Because that's flirting.
Exactly.
That's truly intending to start some where there ought to be none.
Right. Now,
Yeah. So Shannon says, my husband would get upset till he realized I was oblivious, and then he found it funny and tipped the waiters that tried to flirt well as pity.
exactly. And see, the comment here about the husband thought the service was wonderful. There are things that matter to me in service that he's fucking oblivious to.
Yeah, there's things I don't care about. I'm pretty one-dimensional. I typically, like, you can offer me some pretty crap service as long as my drink glass stays full.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like, and here's my whole rationale. My server doesn't control the kitchen.
Right.
At all. At all. All they can do is put in my order, take it back if it's wrong, try to communicate my problem, get it out to me again. That's it. That's all my server has control over. Listening to me the first time, offering me suggestions, letting me know if I don't think you're going to like that or whatever. Being knowledgeable about like the menu and what's on stuff, like that's all to me in the domain of a server. Plus, they control my drink.
Right.
They control my drink. So that is the one thing they have the most power over. The manager is not controlling my drink. The bus boy is not controlling my drink. The chef and the cooks in the restaurant are not controlling my drink. My server controls my drink.
Well, see, and you say they don't control the food. They do control the food. They have the ability to look at that food, know what I told them about my food, and send it back before I even see it.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and that is one layer of that. And sometimes that does come from the experience of knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you're a trainee, I'll cut you some slack. If I think as a trainee, should you know yet? Like, do you have relevant experience? But I mean, in general, if we're talking about most servers, the drink is the biggest thing I care about. You have control. You have the ability that if you know this is a bar-made drink, like my freckled lemonade can be, my strawberry lemonade can be, to make sure that you quickly get the idea, he needs one of the, or he's going to go through one of these.
Right.
He'll need them, but he's going to go through one of these about every 15 minutes. So about 2 to 3 minutes before that, you need to be telling that bartender, make him another one, or you need to be getting it. And before I hit bottom, here's your next one.
Right.
That's it. I will tip you wonderfully for that, because I feel like that's within your control. The rest of my meal can go to hell.
See, not for me. Yeah.
Now, if I have a server that wants to fight me, if I have a server that wants to like roll their eyes and be like, oh, I don't know what your problem is, yeah, your tip's going to go down real quick.
No. See, for me, things that immediately do.
I don't aggressively return. Like, I'm not here playing games. I want my fucking food. Like, that's it. That's all. I asked for X, Y, and Z, assuming most places it's 3 items plus my drink. I ask for these 3 items. I expect these 3 items. I expect them to be, like, if it's a steak, cooked to what I asked to. That, you know, I get the items that I requested. And as long as you do that and they're reasonable, you know, I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. Like, I'm not going to fault you that the kitchen's backed up and it took 20 minutes.
Right.
Longer than it should have.
Right.
I'm not going to fault you for, oh, someone misread and, or, you know, a cook's version of medium is not mine. Like, I'm not going to fault you for that. And even if you're, you know, kind of newer or younger, or in terms of employment, I'm not necessarily going to fault you for, you brought out a chicken dish, but that's not mine.
Well, and what gets me, and there's a server that we get regularly, and it drives me off the planet.
Okay.
He comes by, he grabs the order, he's gone. He drops the food off, he's gone. He drops the drink off, he's gone. There's no conversation. There's no place for me to say, I need you to bring me this sauce, this sauce, this sauce. I need the food prepared this way. He doesn't listen to what I say. I will order the bare basic on that order. Whereas, the same restaurant, we have a waitress. She's magical. She's wonderful. And she's even had the cooks create things for me. And I can sit there and specifically order, and we have a lovely conversation. And she turns around and she goes right and gets the sauces I want, drops them off the table. My drink never goes empty. Like, she knows how I want to run. She's going to get a 15 to 30% tip. He is lucky if I leave $1.
Well, yeah, and a lot of that is because it starts to influence legitimately the meal. Like, if you're dropping stuff off so quickly that I have to wait till my food gets hot or cold or whichever direction it's going to go before I can ask you for a sauce, because I can't get your attention because you didn't, one, like, ask or provide it as you knew it went with it, because you weren't paying attention to the table, then yeah, I start to have problems. You're like, and it's to your own detriment to begin with. Like, I understand restaurants. You need me to place my order, eat my food, and get the F out, so you can turn the table and serve the next people, or leave on time. I get it. I'm following it. I'm not unaware. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not going to just shove food in my mouth and not enjoy it.
See, but my other side of that is, like, I'm now getting to the point that I'm not even going to deal with bullshit. I went out to get us Subway the other night.
You were so bad.
English is this person's first language. The food is made the way the food is supposed to be made, and they were taking shortcuts, and it looked like that Subway had been trashed. I got through your sub, and when they're like, wasn't there a nope, I
Nope,
don't have to
not
correct you
anymore.
5 times.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Like,
Yeah.
my other half will live through your mess without a problem. Because and what you described is, it's not exactly a danger mess in terms of, like, it's not exactly improper food handling. It's just not appropriate for avoiding cross contamination. That if
Right.
you have someone who is allergic to one of these ingredients, because effectively what they were doing is, if you are familiar at all with Subway or delis, there's usually the countertop / sandwich board area that typically should be cleaned between each sandwich. It's not a
Right.
horribly hard job. What was occurring is they were just repeatedly making sandwiches on top of sandwich debris.
Right.
Which for veggies is not so bad. You can wait a little bit. It's
Right.
not technically going to hurt anyone, except for
Mm-hmm.
if someone has a cross contamination problem. Then, if they're allergic to onions, there's a potentiality that sandwich is going to pick up, or at least touch, onions.
Multiple onions. And when it's a gluten allergy and you're looking at the sandwich she just made for your husband, and you're looking at the board, and the board has more vegetables on it than the sandwich he just ordered, walk. Hello, Wendy's. Yes, I'd like a this, and this. Yes, there's a gluten allergy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're going to make other choices and better ones. All right, so Shannon says Edwin will make a server show him his hands before he lets them take our order. If their nails are gross, he asks for a new server. So my favorite part when Edwin worked in a restaurant was I would ask for something special and he'd fix it for me. 3 places he worked started carrying fish tacos because I would ask him to make me some, and other customers would see me with it and ask for some too. Aww.
Yes, that's very occasional. There's a burger called a Western Burger, and I love it. But I can no longer find the place that makes it because the dude that makes it works at Walmart, and I'm like, will you get a cook's job?
Yeah. Well, and then, like, we've had moments at restaurants, and again, we try to be nice, and believe me, that server got tipped well. Because one particular instance, you wanted a BLT so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And like there was this, and it was one of those, like, I do not want to buy the crap to make this one-off. Like, neither of us did.
Right.
What was most likely going to be a one-off craving.
Right.
But I want a BLT so bad. And we had the startling realization there is nowhere that carries this on their menu anymore.
No.
Or very few places. But that day we were kind of short on time. There was only so far we could go, only so much we could do. So I had the brilliant idea. Let's go to this one particular restaurant because I know they at least have all the ingredients. Not
right.
BLT's hard, but they have all the ingredients, and they're a local business.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's on their menu or not, I'm pretty sure you could ask.
Right.
And we did, and they did, and they were very happy to do it. And it's like, you can charge me for whatever you want to. This is what I want. Do that however you want. You can just like call it the turkey sandwich on our bill and take the turkey off. I don't care what you do. Just get him a BLT.
Yes.
Because the man is going crazy over here for a BLT. Just make it happen, please.
Right.
And of course, as a small business, a local business, and the fact the request is not like, can you make a turducken? Because this is another important part when you go off menu. Don't go crazy. Okay. If it exists as another item on the menu, and it's remove one thing and you get this, or okay, you got to make a couple of little changes, but functionally it's not that hard. Ask, be polite, and accept the no.
Right.
Like, we were prepared to get told no.
Yeah. Yes, Shannon.
All about the Waffle House. Yes.
All right, so let's hop over and see if you're the asshole.
Am I the asshole?
No, you are not the asshole.
Yay. I was kind of prepared for that one could go a number of ways. I think sometimes I don't know that there's a wrong answer per se. Like, it all depends upon how you feel.
Well, and the wrong answer is to continue supporting bad choices with good money.
I still can't label that a bad thing.
Okay.
I think that's a choice someone can make. I don't think either which choice you make makes you the asshole.
Right.
Like, the problem is the problem, and it's not your problem. Oh, Shannon's like, I won't give my brother $20 because I know how he is. And that's fair. You're allowed to have that opinion, and it doesn't make you a bad person. And I'll even go so far as to say is it doesn't inherently make him a bad person.
Right.
The behavior, is it problematic and does it create issues? Yes, but that's the behavior is the problem, not him.
Right.
So whether or not you support that is a totally individual decision to me. All right, so of course we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Caitlin Bell, Devin, Bella, and Maria Meyer. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon sponsor and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. All right, guys. We will see you on Monday at 5 p.m. for Metaphysical Today. Bye, y'all.
Bye.